Hello and welcome back to the Let's Go Joe podcast. Today I have the beautiful Miss Dorsey Walker. Here is my guest. She is a state representative, legislator, the whole nine. I'll let her introduce herself. So I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna say, how you doing first?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure.
Oh, and then secondly, introduce yourself, please.
My name is Sherry Dorsey Walker. I'm the state representative for the 3rd District.
What is that exactly? A state representative? Because I just don't know what it is. That's a lie. I know what it is, but just you can explain it better than I can explain it.
So I'm a legislator, and what that means is I work on behalf of the people. Well, first and foremost, I do the work that God called me to do. Mm-hmm. And then I do the work that the people need me to do while also serving my family. So I live a life of service.
That's good. So background information. Speak a little bit about your background and what got you to serving the people.
Outstanding question. So if you really want to know, this was not my path. This was not what I designed for myself, okay? This is definitely a divine design. I attended St. Elizabeth School, which is not too far from here. Went there all 12 years. University of Delaware for undergrad, majored in English and journalism, and Howard University.
Where I went also.
Okay, so HU.
Yes, you know it, the real HU.
And I studied film production at Howard University. So while working on films and doing films about social justice, my crew was like, well, when are you going to run for office? And I was very dismissive of that because that's not something I ever desired to do. Mm-hmm. I saw and see the types of people who are in the arena, and this is not to disparage any of my colleagues, but I said to myself, if I was ever going to do that, I would not be a politician, I would be a public servant, because politicians care about themselves, public servants care about the people, and this is what God would have me to be as a state representative right now. Previously, I served on the Wilmington City Council for the 6th District, and he enlarged my territory by making me a state representative in 2018.
Sounds good. So is there a certain degree you need to do what you do? Like if I were to go to college and wanted to follow your path, a young lady who inspired to do the same line of work you do, is there a certain degree path or a certain college, like for education purposes, that you have to have, or is that something you just apply for and get in?
It's really about the people. I would say if you're going to, if it's a young man or a young woman's desire to be a legislator, my thought would be to go to college if that's your heart's desire, or the military. But the greatest thing, no one can change your heart but God. Mm-hmm. And you have to have a heart for the people to do this work. So you can get as many degrees as you want, but if your heart isn't in the right place, and your mind and body and spirit aren't aligned, then you can say you're a legislator, you can say I'm an elected official, but if you're not doing it for the people, and you can have any degree you want. Now some go to school and major in English and political science, some major in political science, some major in philosophy, some major in engineering. Mm-hmm. But when you answer that call, it's a matter of when you're called, do you respond?
Okay, I have a question, because you said elected. So this isn't a position that you can apply for and get? When you say elected, is that what you mean by elected?
Absolutely. Well, you do apply for it. Mm-hmm. You apply for it, and the people decide if they want you to be their chosen one, or if they want the other individuals who are running against you.
So how does that work? What does that process look like?
That means that you're campaigning.
Campaigning
yes.
As in like a president?
Yes.
So I have a question then. So this leads right to the question. Because I don't know anything about being elected into a position, because I've never applied for a position and had to be elected in. What is the typical average age? And I'm going to say this because I think of the president, Joe Biden. I'm not really into politics, so I really can't speak on him. But I can say I think he's 70-something years old, 80 years old. So I say that to say this. What is the typical or average age for someone in your position And then that's the first part of the question. And the second part is, do you think the older they are, the more out of touch they are with what's going on in the community? Or do you think the older they are, the more in touch they are with what's going on in the community because they've seen the changes?
Those are really good questions. So I'll start with the first one. Each office has an age, a minimum age. And so city council, it's 25. To be a state representative or a state senator, it's 27. To be president of the United States, it's 35. Do I feel like the older someone is, the more in touch or out of touch they are? I don't know that age is what determines whether or not you're in touch with the people, because you can be 22, and if you are in touch and engaged in your community, the law will say that you should not be in office, but the people will say you should be. Mm-hmm. You can be 92, and if your boots are on the ground and you're getting the work done, then the people will elect you.
I agree.
So I'm not much of an ageist. I'm more of a realist, and I'm also the kind of person that says, if you are sincere about change, because when you do this work, you can't be about status quo, keeping things the way that they ordinarily are. If you are sincere about the people, then you're going to want to bring about those necessary institutional and systemic changes that need to happen so that the people benefit.
With you saying that, what's one of the most challenging legislation, I hope I'm saying this right, one of the most challenging legislative things that you worked on?
House Bill 198.
And what's that bill?
That was the bill that added Black history to the state's curriculum.
So when you say added Black history, are we talking outside of February, or are we talking year round? Because I remember being in school and having to learn about what the Black Panther Party was outside of school. I had to learn about who Emmett Till was outside of school. I can go on and on and on about things that I've learned from self-education.
Right.
But when you say Black history in school, exactly what do you mean by that? Like, is there like better curriculums, or is it just bringing awareness to what we're talking about?
Better curriculums.
Okay.
Better curriculums. Because think about when you were in school. If you can see it, you can believe it, then you can achieve it.
I agree.
So any child who looks at me, and especially a child of color, Black male, Black female, or Hispanic child, and says, listen, if she can do it, I can do it.
I agree.
So the most important part of it is we built this country, yet so much has been taken from us. It was a Black man who created the gas elevator. It was a Black man who created the traffic stop, the traffic light. It was a Black man who designed Washington, D.C. and the city of Indianapolis, Benjamin Banneker. But that's not taught. And think about the layouts. If you've been to both cities, it's like, oh, wait a minute, that does make sense. Mm-hmm. So much has happened that we have done as people. And the historical nature of House Bill 198 is we can only have 3 numbers for the maximum number that we can have for a bill is 3. And it's actually a tribute to my 300,000 sorors, because we were established on the campus of Howard University on January 15, 1908. So the closest I could get to 1908 was 198.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the actual bill number itself is historical.
So, being as though you've been working in this for a good amount of time, why do you think that is? I don't even want to make it about race. I want to make it about just why it's happening. Because I mean, we could say, okay, the world is racist and all that, but why do you think in 2023 things are still not being taught to us of who we were and who we are?
That's intentional, because as Willie Lynch said, you take the body, but I'll take the mind. Yeah. I can control them for generations to come.
And it's still working.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so what happens now is we must shift that. And education does that. And educated people operate differently. I look at you, you look at me. The likelihood of me knowing the history of my people and me picking up a gun and shooting you is slim to none. Because I'm going to look at you as a king. I'm not going to look at you as an enemy. And my hope is that you will see me as a queen. And kings and queens don't shoot each other. Point blank, period.
I agree.
And we're descendants of kings and queens.
I agree 100%. You talking to somebody who's really, I have a Black Panther fist tattooed on my arm. I don't really.
It's all over.
People see it, yeah. But I mean, you're talking to somebody who definitely is definitely in agreement of what you're saying. But what's the best way to put it? When the curriculum, so I'm trying to think about, I'm trying to ask questions specific around what they're going to be teaching. So who came up with the curriculum? Was it like something already designed? And then it's like, okay, we've seen that this covers everything we want covered, so this is the best curriculum, or is it something that's still being worked on?
So great question. We're working with the Department of Education to ensure that the curriculum, it will be rolled out this year, for this school year. And the prayer is that we contract with textbook companies who have children who look like us in the textbooks, so that our children can see themselves reflected in the curriculum. The likelihood of me wanting to do math problems when I see that you're buying 8 apples from the corner store or the bodega, which is part of our community. And it's not to say all community, but I'm just saying this is part of our community. Our community meaning Black people as well as Hispanics. Or I went to my church, and how much tithe was collected if $100 was collected from the children's ministry and $200 was collected from the ushers. How much money was collected on Sunday morning? That, if you bring it back to we, the people, the likelihood of our children say, wait a minute, this is what we do every day. This is who I am. Okay, well, let me do this math, because then I care about it. And I sponsor other legislation as well. House Bill 195, adding body-worn cameras to all police officers up and down the state.
How's that going?
It's going well. It's going well. It's a slow-going process like anything else. And the reason why I say it was I'm always looking at I'm an optimist, and I believe that when we put the effort into what needs to be done, it can be achieved. And I'll say, okay, we met with all 48 policing agencies, my office, and we met with all 48 policing agencies. And the constant theme from the police chiefs and from those who are involved with adding these body-worn cameras to all the officers, no one has ever reached out to us and asked us how we feel about a policy. We always get the policy and then we have to implement it. You're reaching out to us on the front end and not the back end. So what that does is it also enhances relationships too. And it can help break down barriers. So a lot of times, communities of color may not have the best relationships with police. You have me in a situation where let's figure out, let's sit down, let's have some roundtable conversations. We can do that because you have the one or several who have the resources and the ability to go in and say, we need to have necessary conversations about how we think, how we perceive things. And communication is key. So often, we just had a training for the House. And one of the things I mentioned is, some people don't know this, but when you walk in a room, we were taught, when you walk in a room, you speak. You say hello to everyone.
I literally was talking about this with somebody. It's not like the thing.
Culturally, other people don't know that. So they don't know that when they walk in a room and they don't speak, that we're perceiving that as quite rude.
Yes.
Whereas,
extremely.
Yes, okay, yes, that's the word.
Extremely rude. Like,
it is. Like, what is...
Come here and don't say hi.
What? You have family members that say, did I wake up with you this morning? Right. Hello. Did you say good morning? Did you say hello? And that's some of the older generation that will speak that way. But the point of the matter is, culturally, how do we break down some of these barriers that exist? Someone will say, well, you know what, I don't see you as a black woman, I just see you as a woman. And I'll say, but you don't see, if you're not seeing me as a black woman, you're not appreciating my richness, my heritage, my pride. And I'm not talking about pride going before pride. I'm talking about pride in being who I am. Italians have pride in who they are.
A lot of, I feel like
Polish, Irish,
all races extremely have pride in who they are.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to say we don't, because to say we don't is, I think it's ignorant to say that, just like, because then we're talking about a class of every black person has.
Which, and I don't subscribe to all.
Right. But outside looking in, I agree with you. I don't think that there's a pride. And I could be wrong. I don't think there's a pride of being a black person. I could be wrong.
It depends on the individual.
Right.
Because
that's why I say I don't say all. Like you
if
said.
you talk to an AKA, a woman of AKA is proud to be an AKA, proud to be a black woman. You talk to a woman, any woman of the Divine Nine, or man, they're proud. We are proud people. We are proud people, period. But the system is teaching us not to have pride in who we are, because it also created that quarantine for the prison system. Starting with the juvenile justice system, and then...
Well, how do we... Because, I mean, I definitely agree with you, and I can see everything you're saying. I can see it. Like, I like just thinking out loud, I can see some other things. Like, that makes what you said make a lot of sense. But here's my question.
Sure.
How do we go about changing some of that? Like, is that something done through legislatively, or is that something that's done through our communities and just? Because I don't think, I don't want to sound ignorant when I say this, but I think a lot of what was taught in the house when you were younger, and I don't even say when I was younger, is gone. Maybe because people are working more, social media, people are on their phones more, people aren't really in touch with each other. But is that something that can change through legislation?
Yes, it can change through legislation. But the other part of it is, when we're talking about household issues, that happens, yes, that's a hard issue. So it's a matter of, what do you want your children to learn? What do you want your children to know? And that boils down to parenting too, to some degree. But then how do you parent if you weren't parenting? If you weren't parenting. So we're dealing with generations of people who, once crack hit our community, it removed fathers from our community. And the scripture says the man is the head and not the tail.
Well, you said it.
Yes.
I agree. I say it all the time.
But that doesn't mean that women are weak.
I agree with that.
What it means is, when things are not in order, see, if the head's not right, the body can't function. So if you don't have the head doing what needs to be done, then the rest of the body falls apart. And that's what we see in our community. Return the fathers to the helm of the household. It does not mean that we, the women, can't run things. We always do. Women are nurturers. But let's not disparage our brothers. Let's uplift them. Let's treat them as they are, descendants of kings. And then the kings will treat the queens as we are. And then we have princesses and princes coming behind us. And before you know it, now we have generations of educated black people who now have a different sense of pride in who they are. And it starts with the curriculum.
I have a question, piggybacking off of that. Do you think...
Curriculum in Christ, I'll say that.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely Christ. So just a quick question. This could be a short answer or a long answer, because I have an idea, but I don't know, right? So you were saying something about the man being taken out of the house. I watched things like on Netflix, something about the 13th. I don't know if you've seen that.
Absolutely.
Was that really something? And this could be, I could be wrong. Like the documentary could have been just reached me a different way than it reached somebody else. But was that something that was really orchestrated and planned? Or do you think that was just a result of crime, things of that nature? Like Bill Clinton, the one that everybody credits to mass incarceration. Were these things planned to get the black men out of the house, or was it just black people just took the fall from it because of resources and not having money at the time? Does that make sense?
That's a great question. So it goes back to Reaganomics. Once President Reagan started removing social programming from our communities, if you think about it, when we grew up, we had several different community centers where we could go. I had Weston, I had the Morphew Center, we had the Boys and Girls Club, several of them. And then once that money was taken away, then it had to be replaced with something. And that something that took the place of the community centers became, in some neighborhoods, not all, became gangs, it became drugs, and then things just spiraled out of control. I remember my first semester at the University of Delaware, okay? I told my family, I said, I'm going to stay on campus, because it's as if I went away to school. I'm not going to be coming back and forth, but I came home to vote. That was the first time I came home that semester. And I asked my family what happened. I live on the west side, okay? We're coming up 2nd Street. Before I went to school, we had sprawling communities. We had people loving on each other. And I just saw despair, a lack of hope. I said, what happened? And my uncle said to me, this is the result of crack cocaine entering our neighborhoods. And not only were people addicted, they were selling it. I mean, the sentences were different for people who sold crack cocaine versus those who sold powder cocaine. And so when we think about it, we say, oh, well, we have to deal with the root of the issue. The systemic and institutional issues and problems that exist in our country, if we are not honest about them, and if we don't start dealing with them, then our problems will deal with us. It's just like an addiction. Until you deal with that addiction takes over you. But at some point, we have to figure out, how do we overcome this? And so, we're not natural criminals. But the news will show you and make people believe that the black man is the worst individual on earth. I don't subscribe to that.
Me neither.
And I never shall. But there are those who believe that, because those media images are very powerful. The media shapes your mind. You know that, and I know that.
Make you buy stuff, make you not like a person. And then just to tap right into that, I was laughing at my dad, who's I think my dad's 70 years old. 60 said he's 70 years old, so he called me one day just to piggyback off of what you're saying about media, how powerful it is. And I'm a Kanye West fan of his music.
Absolutely.
So my dad was like, yeah, you heard about that crazy guy? I'm like, it's only one way. He's talking about Kanye West. It's like, there's only one way you can gather that Kanye West is crazy, and that's through media. I'm like, Dad, you don't even know who this guy is. But that's just showing you the power of the media. Why don't we use the power of the media to help us? Like protesting, right? Does that even work anymore?
Absolutely.
How?
And I can
so if people going out picketing, that works.
So you call it a protest, I call it a social movement, because it just happened at Delaware State University just this week. But what ended up happening as a result of those those social movements, it was a closed-door meeting to address the issues that our babies brought to the attention of the administration. We're both byproducts of Howard University. We're Bison.
Yes.
Didn't our babies protest?
Yes. During the time when housing was something.
Yes. But guess what? Things are shifting. So you can have a protest, but then after the protest, look and see what's going to be the progress. And so you go into it knowing that you have an end goal and what it is that you desire to see changed. So the protest or social movement brings attention to that. Then you work toward the progress.
Do you think that's what we're struggling at then? Because I don't want to use any particular incident, but I'll say I'll say during COVID, like George Floyd. I will use it. I use George Floyd. I remember everything that came about from George Floyd and the things the media, because the media essentially to me got behind what happened with George Floyd. But now that because time after a while, time just either forget about something or people just move on. So do you think that's the problem with any social movements, that eventually the powers that be or people that put all these things in place, do they know over time they're gonna forget about it, they're gonna move on?
Sometimes that's the hope. But how we were able to get House Bill 195, body-worn cameras, was as a result of George Floyd. Use of force, George Floyd. There were so many pieces of legislation that we were able to pass as a result of the protests leading to progress.
But those protests were extreme though. And I'm not saying
were they?
To me, not extreme. What I mean by extreme, I don't. I don't have a problem with what happened because it happened for a reason, and God allowed it to happen. So I'm not going to sit here and say, and like you said, the things that happened because of it. But what I mean by extreme, like they were extreme to someone outside looking in, like, okay, that's never happened. So like Wilmington protested, Baltimore protested, Chicago protested. So the Martin Luther King days, where for 6 months no one rode buses, and then they finally gave in. Like that was extreme. Like, so what I mean by like extreme is like that was like
over a year.
Right. Like that was you're right. That was over a year. So like when I look at something like that, it's not extreme. Might be the wrong word, but it lasted so long that people got the point.
Yeah.
So do you think that, not the protest, but do you think, because that's where do you think that's where things start to become an issue? Because over time people don't allow what's going to happen, or like you said, a year Martin Luther King, like black folk did not ride buses, and with our buying power that I know that black people have, I'm sure financially that hit a lot of people's pockets. One, two, that I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because we've seen it happen with George Floyd, but that amount of unity is kind of, I don't know if that's still going on.
So it's important to have unity, but J. Edgar Hoover said it best. He said the biggest threat to American security is Negro unity. Think about that.
That's why they shut everything we do down.
Think about it. But why are we allowing it? Why do we allow the infiltration? Sure, you saw the Harriet Tubman movement.
I've seen it.
It was a movement, and it's interesting because there's always that character bigger that exists, that runs and tells our plans.
Yes, I can't stand it. I was mad at him too. But you're right.
He eventually shifted.
Right.
So
what
we have to do is grab a hold of bigger and ensure that bigger understands that there's a bigger plan, and that we need to work together so that we can do what we need to do collectively. And their ice isn't colder, their grass isn't greener. What's the difference? We're melanated.
Well, it bothers me too, because I agree. So I was telling my brother, I said, one thing about, because I don't like seeing all black people, but one thing about us as a race, I think we're so loving and forgiving and caring that we forget. And like my brother knows well, one of my favorite places to eat, and I might shouldn't say this, but I don't care, was Pizza Hut. I mean, not Pizza Hut, Papa John's.
Okay.
And I don't know if you heard what happened with the owner. I haven't had Papa John's since. And it's like, I'd rather use my resources, my money, and I'm only one person, and it doesn't matter. I have not had Papa John's since he said whatever he said. And I don't even know exactly what he said, because 50 different things have been said. But I'm like, I can at least play my part, and I'm not giving you $1. And even when he got shot, I said, I'm still the biggest black man you can find in the United States, and the most popular. I still was like, yo, I don't care if they got Harriet Tubman. The person at top said something about us that shows his true colors. As much as I love Papa John's, I walked away from it, and I haven't had a slice of Papa John's since. And I was a person that ate Papa John's 3, 4, 5 times a month.
Now, if more people thought like that, collectively, look at the buying impact that we have. We don't offend easily, but when something is so extreme, like what happened in that moment, if we use our buying power to stop some of what is happening, that's when people pay attention. And it's unfortunate that when we talk about we're talking about the peaceful protests. Let's be clear. We're talking about peaceful protesting,
yes.
Okay? Mm-hmm. We're not talking about the other.
Right.
Right. Which that too is a social movement, but
works too.
But that ends up, you end up in a different situation. You don't get to go home sometimes after those situations. But think about what you just said. It's the real issue is greed. And how does that affect our society? Think about this. Landowners, the largest landowner in the world is the Catholic Church. So let's think about the fact that Native Americans, this is their land. This is our land. I mean, we all have some Native American in us, people of color, black people in particular. And so think about when you're taken from your own land and you're brought to another land. And then there are laws that are created that say that you're not even a full person. You're 3/5 of a person. We have to learn our history so that we don't repeat it, so that we are no longer the biggest in the room, but the brightest.
Well, the Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth.
Say so.
Right?
That's right.
And I look at meek, when you look at the definition, I say, I don't want to make it a race thing, but I'm like, black people might inherit this earth one day before Jesus Christ comes back. Wishful thinking, maybe not. But
what's in the word?
We'll see, yeah. So how do you feel about the be quiet and don't buy it? Is that better than them trying to have a voice and better be heard? So what I mean, let me explain that. So quietly, Papa John, let's use Papa John's again. Us quietly just saying, yo, I don't care if you're black, don't buy it. Do you think that's more impactful, or somebody coming out and saying, all right, we're not going to do this? Do you think that's more impactful?
I think the combination of the two. Keep in mind, we're byproducts of HBCUs. So we're taught, first off, we're taught to have pride in who we are. And secondly, we're also taught to respect our brothers and sisters. So part of respecting our brothers and sisters is, what are we going to allow?
I agree. We allow a lot.
And you're right about the fact that most of us are churched, whether we're Muslim, we're Christian, whatever the religion is. We go to some house of worship. And as people of faith, we are forgivers. We should continue to be that. But we should also be mindful of, at the end of the day, let's not let this happen again on our watch.
Yeah, and I don't think that. Now, what you saying that, I don't think that happens enough. I know that doesn't happen enough. Because if it did, I think we would really, so I agree, I think we would see real change. Like I was telling my brother, another thing, there was a black owned, like I love Nikes. Saying this out loud, I probably would never stop buying Nikes. But I also love, and it's not about support, because I don't believe in support, I believe in buying what you like. And when you say support, to me, it's kind of like a crutch. But if you came out with some nice sneakers and I like your sneakers, I'm going to keep buying your nice sneakers the same as I do
That's
for Nike. Yeah, but it's support. But I think we do more like support, and it's like, no, I don't look at it as support. I'm just purchasing from you because I like what you're selling. To me, it's a difference. I could be wrong. But I was like, my brother showed me these black-owned sneakers. And I'm like, yeah, we need to start wearing them. And I just, small scale, again, but to me, it starts there. Because I remember COVID, and I might be talking too much, but I remember COVID, all the like malls and things were down. And my brother sent me a post of like black folk when they got their whatever that loan,
PPP,
not the PPP loan, the other loan, whatever the stipend was. And it could have been funny. It could have been it could have been an old video. It could have been anything.
The stimulus check.
Stimulus. But like I literally seen a line of people trying to get into Louis Vuitton stores, Gucci stores, and things of that nature. And I'm like, why don't we exercise that same buying power with like glamaholics?
And buying property.
Right. Yeah. Definitely buying property. Right.
Our next generation.
Yeah. But I mean, that's probably another conversation for a whole nother time. But I do want to ask you a question. Just looking at the change, something you said about college, when you came home, everything looked different. Guns. Now maybe this is something that legislation has no power over, but just because they're just such a big, multi-billion-dollar company, like guns make billions and billions of dollars for our economy. But why are guns so easily accessible when there's laws to keep people from purchasing guns? I guess that's the first question. And the second question, or part of that is, are there really laws like that prohibit people from wanting to have a gun and kill somebody? Because like murder to me is getting worse each year. Accessibility to guns is getting worse each year. So that's something from the legislative.
It is. That's something that we can legislate. But keep in mind the Second Amendment does exist. And keep in mind that the Fourth Amendment, like people have a right to bear arms, okay? Point blank, period. But the other side of it is, how do we legislate? And how do we legislate the illegality of the gun trade or the underground gun trade? There's no way to do that. And I'm just being honest with you.
I respect your honesty.
And the reason
I'd rather know.
Because there are people who will say, we can stop that. First off, you have to figure out who the people who are selling the guns illegally on the streets. That's number one. Now, the legal purchasing, we can do something about that. We, the legislators, can do something about that. We have put some laws in place for people who have mental illness. They should not have access to guns. Point blank, period. Okay?
But do they?
Now, according to the law, they shouldn't.
Right.
Based on some laws that we have passed.
Right.
But what's stopping them from going and purchasing something illegally? Straw purchases. That's another way where people purchase guns for someone else and then pass it off to another individual. That's a straw purchase. There are laws in place to stop that. The illegal gun trade, we have to pray about that thing.
Yes.
And seriously try to figure out who is behind all of that. I mean, that's organized crime. I'm being very candid with you. We can legislate the number of guns that someone can purchase at any given time. We can try to put permits in place for guns. But some of this, we need the help of the people. We need the help of the people, because if the people know who's doing this, then maybe the people can share with whomever they trust, and some of this can get broken down. But we cannot do this by ourselves just as legislators. We need God, legislators, the people, all the police. We need to work on one accord so that we can shift this dynamic.
Do you feel as though right now, for today, let's say from right now, do you feel as though people, I'm not even going to say people of color, do you feel like there's trust in the community with black, I'm sorry, I don't want to make it about color. Do you feel like there's a better trust with police now? Like with some of the things that came from George Floyd, them having cameras on, things of that nature. Like, are we seeing progression in the trust from community person and police, or is it like still a battle that's...
I think trust is an individual issue. So I can't speak for everyone. That's a question that it's almost like you take a camera and you take a microphone and put it in someone's face and you say, what are your feelings about the police community? I feel like in the city of Wilmington we're making progress. We now have Chief Wilfredo Campos as the police chief, first Hispanic ever. I believe that's making progress. We had previously Chief Cummings, Chief Tracy, and I believe that we are making progress. There's always more to do, just like legislators. It takes a lot for people to trust, because once that trust is broken, it takes a lot to build that back. And it's not just communities of color, but it does adversely affect us. But did you see the video of the predator from Idaho who killed those students? It was 4 students. And he was stopped twice on the highway. And the body cam video was released. And the police stopped he and his father because he was tailgating. And they gave the excuse that they were driving from Washington State to the Poconos and they were exhausted. And they went back and forth in a very respectful way. And when I saw that video, those 2 videos, I said, That's how all police stops should be. Like,
Regardless of the color.
right. And when I say that, and this is not to disparage officers, this is give everyone that same benefit of the doubt that was given to that murderer.
I agree.
That dude was stopped twice on the highway.
I didn't see that.
Yet he
I'm
killed
gonna look for it now.
4 students.
Wow. I didn't know about that.
When he was given the benefit of the doubt both times he was stopped. If traffic stops go like that, then that's how we can start building more trust. That's where young black males won't feel the need to run away when an officer stops them. Some of this can be broken down through communication, building trust, and having repetitions. I love sports, playing sports. And so the more reps you get in with your team, the more comfortable you are. Like if you're playing point guard, I'm going to feel comfortable passing the ball to the center with the hopes that the center's going to dunk it. But I got to see the center do that several times in order to pass the ball to alley-oop it, okay?
Are they taught this though? Like so, because I agree with you 100%, but is that something that's being taught? Because like trainings exist.
Correct.
So is this something that's being taught to them? Because sometimes, people, I'm human, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, yes, you are. But these trainings are in place for X, Y, and Z. So are these things that are being taught educationally? Like, do they have access to things like this for them to do better at their jobs? Because, you're only going to be as good as how you train.
True.
So are these trainings?
Or how you were raised.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's think about that too.
That too.
If you're socialized a certain way, then you're going to treat people a certain way based on how you were raised.
I agree.
Right.
Well, is that something that's being offered to police nowadays?
I believe they are being taught implicit bias, but if you've been taught for 22 years or 25 years to be one way, now you're expected to shift. That's going to take time.
Yeah.
That's going to take time. And so we have to be fair to law enforcement as well as the community. And somebody said, well, why would you say that? Because you're talking about generations, breaking down generations of being taught one way. And now there's a shift in the atmosphere. And so all communities, now this is where I say all communities, have to figure out how do we work with law enforcement? Do we want the changes that we desire to see? Do we really want them? And if we do, then we have to work collectively toward them.
I agree. Well, you said something about going to West End. I used to work there. It's funny you said West End. I used to work there. But, so, like, now that I look at, like, I was a PAL kid. I grew up in the Police Athletic League.
Okay.
I want to say they're probably still operating, still
They are.
have kids. The one, I used to walk there from home, the one in...
Garfield Park?
Yeah, Garfield
Okay,
Park.
okay.
So I said that to say this. So they are still operating. You said they are still operating. Is this a legislative thing also to get more community-based places like that? Like,
Absolutely.
Because I don't understand, like you said, I grew up, I would get off the bus, I would either went to the PAL or I was going outside to play sports. But these things were available.
But it was safe.
Right. I don't want to get into safe because that's subjective depending on what you're like comfortable with.
Right.
But I agree. On the surface level, it was safe. But what stopped funding for that? Because you said something about funding earlier, and I didn't want to interject earlier. But what stopped the decrease of funding, and what did they do with that funding? Because I'm sure
that was the breakdown. That was when Reagan was in office, and we call it Reaganomics.
So they never, like, nobody, because we clearly see it's not working, right? So nobody. This was designed.
So
this still part of the design is still going on.
That's still happening. So what is happening now, and I'm glad you mentioned that because by God's grace and mercy, we were able to open a community center in my district. I Am My Sister's Keeper, MSK Community Center. And the beauty of that is now we have students, now we have our babies that won't be on the streets, but they'll be able to go to the Old Teen Hedwig's Gym located at 1009 Sycamore Street, which is now the MSK Community Center. You have to have people with a desire to want to shift the community. Ms. Charlotte Miller Lacey, who's the founder and CEO of I Am My Sister's Keeper. She came to me when I was on city council and said, look, we need a place for MSK. Okay. And I said, Miss Charlotte, this past summer, she said, we need a home. I said, okay. Well, are you going to allow our boys to come in? She said, are you serious? Did you really ask me that question? I said, well, you don't have to ask.
Got him now.
She said, yes. Well, Miss Charlotte, now we have a community center in the 3rd district. And the reason for that is there was the desire of the legislators to work together to make it happen. You had Miss Charlotte Miller-Lacey and her team from MSK, Ms. Melanie Phillips, who's also the deputy director with Parks and Rec, and Director Ian Smith. You have people who have a desire to shift the community. And when you have everyone working toward the same goal, putting egos aside and saying, this is for the betterment of our babies, for our families, you can get it done. Mm-hmm. But if it's about, well, my name has to be in lights, or my name has to be this, that's when things start getting a little hairy. That's not a black-white issue, that's a human issue.
So how can a regular, let me use the word regular, how can a regular person that has no idea what's going on, one, get information to know what's going on, and then second part of that is get involved with these things?
Sure. I would say find someone who is in office that you feel like you can trust. Have a conversation or have conversations with that individual or those individuals. And find community organizations that you feel like you can trust and become involved. And the reason why I say that is it takes everyone working together. Point blank, period. Mm-hmm. Each piece of the puzzle has to come together for the puzzle to be solved. And we have, and I had no idea this was going to happen, but on Martin Luther King Day, the Sherry Dorsey Walker Dream Chasers Gym was unveiled. So come to that gym. I want everybody coming to that gym and being a part of the change that we want to see.
So you said something about everybody coming together. Do you think, I want to say do you think, but I don't want to say would you, and this is a you question, not so much your office, do you think, outside looking in, it looks like Washington's divided, and you're saying like people coming together, so, and I could be wrong, I could be completely wrong, but outside in, it looks like, it just looks a little divided, and I can elaborate on that, but I don't think I have to. So with that in mind, so with Washington being divided, how can you, what's the best way to, what's the nicest way to answer this? How can you expect somewhere like your office to be, together and chasing for the right thing when everybody's example of what the United States should look like clearly looks a little divided? Does that even play a part with you guys? Is this something talked about, like, or is it just like, oh, that's just Washington? Because I think it plays a part, but I could be wrong.
It can play a part. It does play a part. Delaware has always had this way of doing business where people were a little more collegial. And it is my hope that we stay that way. I can see a shift from when I first went down in 2018 to now, but I'm still hopeful. I'm hopeful that we can shift it back to being more collegial, being more loving, nurturing toward one another, walking in the room saying hello to each other. Those kinds, little things that make a difference. Washington is dysfunctional right now. You have an individual in office who shouldn't be in office.
I agree.
I mean, the voters have buyer's remorse in New York right now. And that is a big issue. But then it takes us to the trust. When people see individuals doing that it makes it that much more difficult for the ones who really want to do the right thing. It doesn't mean that we're perfect human beings. I'm not professing that by any means. But what I am saying is there are legislators who want to make a difference. There are school board members who want to make a difference. They're legislators too. There are people at every branch of government who really want to bring about the necessary changes. It's just a matter of finding those people.
Well, what determines, like, what's the best way to answer this question? What determines which laws should be pushed? Like, who prioritizes which one of, like, high importance? And, like, we ain't really worried about that. Who determines that?
The House and the Senate here in Delaware. So Dover is very powerful. Dover is a very, very powerful body. And our leaders determine what bills get heard and what bills don't get heard, what bills end up in committee, which bills don't go to committee. Right now we have, unfortunately, we have an all-white bond committee in the House. Bond is one of the most powerful committees. That's the infrastructure, capital infrastructure. We don't have a person of color, but there are 13 black people in the House right now.
So say that one time. So there are 13 black people in the House, and Bond
16 altogether.
And Bond is all white people.
Bond is all white.
How did that happen?
It's about. It comes down to what is that's the Speaker's choice. So I guess
I'm still trying. That's crazy.
And this isn't a point fingers. This is we need to raise awareness about the things that are happening in Dover because they adversely or positively affect our communities. If we're talking about infrastructure for the city of Wilmington, and we don't have anyone from the city of Wilmington on that committee, well then what's our infrastructure going to look like? Right. But if you have people from other communities that are on that particular committee, well then things are going to shift a little bit for their communities because they're sitting there. So it's a matter of broadening our horizons. And even people in leadership, we all are in leadership when we get elected, but then we elect the majority leader, the majority whip, and the speaker. And it's a matter of being able to, and I said this yesterday in our training, see us. You have to see us. And we can't be invisible to you. We're in the room. But maybe that is the issue. Maybe they do see us. And maybe it's like, well, we're going to make sure that you don't have the kind of power that you think you have.
So
this is 2023.
Yeah.
We're talking about and since I've been in Dover, because it is based on seniority that people get put on that committee. And it's interesting because initially when you go down there, you don't have senior status, okay? Then get elected again, I'm on my third term. So theoretically, I should be on Bond. But Bond is all white in 2023. Bond has been all white since I've been in Dover.
Wow. And how long have you been in Dover? I know you just said
this is my third term.
Yeah, I want you to read.
Yes,
so how long was the term? How long was the term?
2 years.
So 6 years in,
yes,
and it's still
all white.
All white.
Yes.
Is there any? So it sounds like there's nothing we can do to change that. Then
it would require the people to say to leadership, "This is unacceptable to us. We see it." But if the people don't raise, or if don't say anything, then why would there be a need to change things? It's almost like in voting laws. So voting has become more difficult now than it was in 1964. Why is that? Because people see the power of the people who may not look like some others. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, this is affecting me. I may not stay in power. So I'm going to figure out ways that I can continue to be in power. If we're going to have the conversation, let's have it.
So, because I've heard people say their vote isn't important. And you brought up voting. So how important is voting? Now I'm going to just stop it right there before I keep on going.
I'm going to quote President Ted Blunt, former president of City Council. Voting affects the day you're born, the day you die, and all the days in between. That give you clarity?
Yeah, it gives me clarity. But so when I'm thinking of voting, so people, and this could be I could be wrong, but people think of voting, they think of Joe Biden, they think of the president.
Certainly.
How important is the House vote over the actual presidential electoral vote or whatever it's
They're
called?
equally important. And why I say they're equally important, because politics are local. So it's the local elections that will greatly impact the individuals right here, right in our state. So House Bill 25, same-day voter registration. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You can register the same day and vote.
When did that, before you go on, when did that happen?
That was this past
That happened
session.
recent.
That was this past session.
Okay.
But this Delaware
I remember having to wait
Court,
for you. After the president, you had to wait.
Delaware
That's gotta be new.
Supreme Court overruled it, said it was unconstitutional. So now I have to go through the process of putting forth a constitutional amendment. Constitutional amendments take 2 consecutive sessions. So I'll have to file the bill, get it passed in 2024. And then in 2025, because it has to be 2 consecutive sessions, then in 2025 passed the bill for a constitutional amendment. Vote by mail. It was ruled unconstitutional as well.
Why? What's the logic behind that?
You tell me.
I mean, all right, so I'll guess. So that means, okay, if I can keep you from voting, if you register and you vote the same day, and you can vote the same day or the next day, that means you can vote. But if you register and you gotta wait, and then say things happen and slips your mind, forget your mind, because people forget things all the time.
There you go. And you have
It
to
makes you
register
not do
30
it.
days in advance of the state of Delaware.
Right. That's why I said. So when you said that, I thought it passed, but then the hearing got denied,
It did pass.
and they got denied.
We were able to use it for the primary in September, and then for the general, between the primary and the general, the Delaware Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional.
I don't mean to laugh.
I know.
That is crazy.
I know, right?
That's crazy. That's crazy. Like, I don't understand how that. But that would make somebody say, "I'm not gonna vote then." I'm just being honest, because that would make me say, "Well, I tried. It didn't work, so forget it. I'm not even going to vote." Like, they don't want me to vote. Matter of fact, that's what it'll make me. That's what it makes me feel like. It'll make me feel like, okay, they really don't want me to vote. Because if I'm taking, let's say, an hour out of my day, I'm busy. I take an hour out of my day to do this, to go and register, and I get there, I'm told I got to wait 30 days. Like, well, I know a lot of people also that think this way. If I got to go up there, if I got to change my schedule around to go up there and wait in line, or not, forget the line. I got to go up there. I got to take time out of my day just to go up there and register. Then I wait 30 days.
30 days before an election. So you have to register 30 days before the election.
I get why they did it then, because it would just definitely make people feel like, I know. I'd be like, never mind, I'm not doing it.
Is it a way to discourage the voters?
It is.
Okay.
You don't think it is? You don't have to. I think it is.
No, I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that, okay, yes, if it needs to be a constitutional amendment, then fine, let's make it a constitutional amendment. But then when we make the constitutional amendment, is it still going to be an issue? So why make it more difficult for people to vote? Vote by mail. The president voted by mail, for heaven's sakes. The previous president voted by mail. Right, how about that? So now all of a sudden and then it comes down to parties too. Like, some parties feel like it's a little easier for one party to vote. I just want people voting, period. It's not even a partisan issue for me. Whatever party you are, exercise your right. Your vote is your voice. And so we should not be trying to minimize someone's voice.
Have we came far as a people when it comes to voting? Because I don't want you would know the exact year. I wouldn't, because I really just don't know. To be honest with you, and I probably shouldn't say it out loud, but I know it was. I'm gonna say before the 1950s, we weren't allowed to vote. It could have been before then. I don't know. But have we came further as a people with like voting, like black people? Because I remember like years ago, and you might like P. Diddy, vote or die. I remember all these movements. Did these movements actually assist us, or were they just movements for that president, and then after that president didn't get elected, we wanted in office? I think it was Curry at the time, John Curry. Is that his name? John Curry. I could be wrong. That's neither here nor there. But the movements with vote or die, and this year you guys need to vote. Have those movements changed or helped?
Me, John Evers.
I'm not gonna lie to you, but I know. I think it was somebody going up against Bush when Diddy hopped in and was like vote or die. I want to say it was Kerry, but I'm not gonna lie. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But have movements like that helped?
Al Gore. Okay, so
it could be Al Gore.
The movements do help. They raise awareness. That's without question. If the movements didn't work, then we would not have a vice president who looks like us right now.
That went to Howard.
They went to Howard. My double sister, an AKA and an HU woman. So the movements do work, but then we have to continue. Like it can't just be for that one election, okay? Like Stacey Abrams, she's an anomaly. She should be the governor of Georgia, and by God's grace, prayerfully she will be. Yes, one day she will be. She should have been the first black woman governor in this country. Point blank, period. And I'm saying that she's a woman of Delta Sigma Theta, but she's my sister. Right. Nonetheless, she's a denied woman. We have to continue to keep our foot on the gas. So the movements do work, but we have to stay engaged. Because the hope is, oh, well, you know what, they'll forget about it, and then we can continue to have all-white committees.
Like the bombing.
There you go. Mm-hmm. And they continue to be that way. Like, that is unconscionable in 2023.
That's crazy.
But then think about it. If I've been allowed to do this down through the years and no one has said anything, then why should I stop? Not just this individual, but collectively all throughout the country. We've been allowed to do it this way. Why are we having conversations in 2023 about first anything?
I agree.
Like, seriously.
I agree.
The first black woman to represent the 3rd District.
That was you.
Black woman to be elected to City Council in the 6th District. But if you look at the gerrymandering, the districts were cut to always keep a certain person of a certain persuasion in these seats. And now, it's like, wait a minute, not only do we live in it, we're born and raised in these communities. And it's like, whoa, they didn't anticipate that the West Side girl would rise up. I didn't anticipate it, I'm going to tell you the truth. That was, like I said, this was not my plan.
God did.
God did.
DJ Khaled.
God did. Yeah. Yes. And he's using me as a vessel.
I'm glad you brought that up. So there's a lot of opinions in the world we live in. How do you keep God first? Opinion second. Yes, in the arena you operate in.
I do not go on the floor. When I first get to Dover, go in my office, I close the door. I pray. I listen to gospel music on my way down. Mm-hmm. I keep my spirit guarded, not in a negative way. When I say guarded, I dress a certain way. How do I dress? I wear my breastplate of righteousness. I wear my helmet of salvation, my shoes of the gospel. And I keep my sword, which is the word of God, in my hand. Now, does that mean I'm perfect? No, but it means that I operate differently. So I'm always going to be different because it's easy to get sucked in this particular arena. This is the last bastion of power, so to speak, okay? And the devil is definitely busy in this arena. And he gets busy with the nonsense. See, if we stayed focused on the policy and the people, there would be no place for the devil to infiltrate. But the door is open every day for the enemy to infiltrate. That's why you have to have people of God in these positions who can tear down these strongholds through prayer, who can call upon other prayer warriors, and we can do the work of the people. Now, it is difficult. Do not misunderstand me. It is extremely difficult doing it this way. It'd be so much easier if I would just take a bag, but, do it the way it's always been done. But that's not my calling.
Are you alone and are you treated differently? Because I hate to say this, I don't remember the name of the movie, but it was Taraji P. of Howard grad. There was a movie that I'm trying to think of this movie. Yeah, Hidden Figures. So their treatment was different. So that's two-part question. One, are you alone, woman of faith?
I'm never alone. Jesus goes with me everywhere I go.
You know what I mean?
I'm never alone.
Then two, are you treated differently because of the way you look, the way you carry yourself, and because you keep God first? And I'm asking this, before you answer this, I'm asking this because I take God everywhere I go. God first, God first, God first. I ignore it, but I know some of the visions that I have in life, the places that I want to go, and then listen to people like Tyler Perry talk about how he's treated differently, but it doesn't allow it to affect him. So that's the two questions. One, are you alone? Like in your office, are you the only one with faith? And you might not know.
I'm not the only one that's a believer.
And then are you treated differently because of that?
I'm not the only one who's a believer. There are other believers, and when I say believer,
that's good to know.
It's they may not necessarily be Christian, but they believe and they have faith. Okay, so I consider them believers. And I'm part of the prayer caucus, which is very important to me. We don't necessarily have to talk about, we don't talk about legislation in prayer caucus. We talk about God. We talk about uplifting each other. We talk about families. We pray for each other. We talk about our communities, okay? And we get to know each other through prayer caucus. What was this? The second question was,
are you treated differently being a black woman doing all the things you're doing? Because the things you're doing are great.
So how am I expected to be treated?
I don't know. So when I listen to you saying like the bond, like them being all white people,
right?
Me thinking they're probably all white men. I could be wrong. They're probably all white men.
Woman.
So all white men, white woman probably close family, something to where she got in. I could be wrong. Again, I'm just thinking of how like jobs that I've had where people get positions based off of who they know sometimes, things of that nature. And I can be completely wrong. Just walk with me. So being so they're all white, and you're being the first breaking barriers, so the first black woman to do anything brings a lot of attention to you.
And there are the firsts that are down there. The class of 2018, there were a lot of firsts. So 8 of us went down. So that is the largest that the Black Caucus had ever been.
Well, that's good.
Okay? And then we started the Black Caucus as a result of that. And Representative Stephanie T. Bolden was no longer by herself, the longest serving the longest serving black woman in the state of Delaware. Okay, she's been in office 34 years, served on city council 20 years, and now she's been in Dover. And so she's the founder, and Senator Darius Brown was the chair, and I was the vice chair. We established the Delaware Legislative Black Caucus, and there were questions about why it was necessary, and I didn't mind explaining to the individuals why it was necessary for this block, to be together as one. And there were moments where individuals try to break that down, but we still have to stand strong. And so, am I treated differently? Am I on bond?
Say that again?
I said, I asked, am I on bond?
Oh, you on what? I'm sorry.
Am I on the bond committee?
Oh, no.
Okay.
You're not. I'm sorry. You said on bond. I thought you asked me something else.
No.
That's why I was trying to think how to
answer. Am I on bond?
So, no.
All right. So.
Is that a goal of yours? Honestly.
It would have been this session, because it should have manifested. But God has something greater.
I agree.
So whatever God doesn't give you in that moment,
there's something better coming.
There's something better. Sometimes he has to be still.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes things happen, you don't understand it. And then when it happens, you're like, all right.
But sometimes he has to strengthen you too.
Yeah, well, I agree.
Sometimes he has to let you see some things.
I agree.
And you have to be, and you can be proud and happy for others, but at the same time, you know that I just need to wait for the manifestation of what God has shown me. But powerful committees, and I chair Sunset, which that's a good committee too. But when you're talking about the money committees, you need to ensure that black people are on those committees.
Mm-hmm.
You do.
That's how the real change comes.
That's where the real change comes. That's where you can start saying, okay, well, you know what, there's a procurement opportunity. Let's make sure we get a black wealth manager. Let's start bringing black-owned banks to the state of Delaware. See, now we can start really changing the conversation and changing the landscape. Now we can start owning our own grocery stores. Now we don't have food deserts because we can go to the black-owned bank and get that line of credit.
I'm with you.
So you understand what I'm saying?
100%.
So when the Liberty Bank and Trust, which is in 11 different states, says, hey, I want to come to Delaware, we can say, well, the door is open because we're uniquely positioned to make that happen. You understand?
But right now we're not, currently.
Oh, we are uniquely positioned because I'm working with Liberty right now.
Okay.
I'm not going to let one thing stop me. I'm going to keep moving.
Right.
Right.
That's good to know.
Because we're built differently. Some may get in a situation and be like, wow, that's really an offense. Whereas you look at it and you say, okay, God, you want me to move differently. There's something else you need me to do. So you need me to focus over here. So if I stay in the offense, the community center never opens.
Yeah, you're right.
If I stay in the offense, then the things that the community needs from me to do and the legislation that the community needs me to pass, I'm so stuck in the fence that I can't even do what needs to be done in these committees. And so I'm sulking versus succeeding.
Yeah, and helping out, and I agree. So how do you feel about these words? And you'll know where I got it from when I say it. In God we trust. Because I feel like, I don't know if this is coming down from
On the money.
Yeah, I don't know if this is coming down from offices. I don't know where it's at, but I feel like, I can say this to you, we're living in a more, God is being taken away out of schools. Like, I mean, a lot of things. So how do you feel about that? Do you feel as though it's happening from, like, intentionally from the powers that be, or like powers that be were like legislatively, things of that nature? Are they taking it out that way, or is it just a coincidence that God has been taking out of everything?
Well, prayer was legislated out of the schools.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
What was the reasoning behind that? Do you know?
Because it was offensive to the atheists.
Wow, I never knew that. Wow. so okay, then legislatively God is being taken.
Yeah, but keep in mind, down through the years, the scriptures were always used for slavery, for anything that people wanted to create division and divisiveness. Scriptures were used for that. But now God has sent his vessels in, and the scriptures are being used differently. We walk by faith and not by sight.
Amen.
Right. And seek the peace of the city. See, all of these write the vision and make it plain. For a due season, if you're not tarried, it will come to pass. So see, his words are being used for the manifestation of the goodness of Jesus. And so now it's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's not, we were using it for the master. And now you all coming in here, you really know your word. And you're using it for the message.
y'all disturbing the peace. Yeah, that's crazy. But I don't know, because I feel like, and I'm glad we had an opportunity to sit down and talk, but I felt like legislatively, prior to this conversation, I felt like, it was just a title, and I'm just being honest with you. When I mean by a title, like, I felt like more like the president, because people say the president is the face, and there's so many people before he gets to say anything, but it sounds like in the arena you live in, like you guys really are the voice who says, okay, we're pushing this law, we're not pushing this law, and things of that nature.
Right.
So I'm glad we talked, because I learned a lot.
Yes.
And I would definitely like to talk to you again off of camera. Because I would like to see how more people can get involved. Yeah, like HU. But I would like to see how more and more people could get involved, because like I talk to people and I say like let's just use finances. I tell people all the time, especially people of color, I don't think that is that we're dumb and ignorant. I just think we don't know. Like I tell people, get life insurance, get life insurance, get life insurance, and they don't even see the benefits of it. But it's like, you haven't even done the research, kind of like you said about like the bill that they changed where you could learn the same day, so you can register and vote the same day. It's kind of like that. It's like, if you're not taught, if somebody's not putting it in front of you, you're just never going to know.
Right.
And I feel like that kind of now, and I thank you, Sienna, for introducing us. Yeah, because I was like,
Shout out.
I was saying to her, like, how do laws really change? She said, well, from the legislation, I know somebody such and such and such, but I'm like, I just want to talk to you, and
Glad you did.
I'm so glad you came to talk to me, and I definitely we're going to exchange information, so we can keep in touch. You have anything you want to say? Any final words that you want to say to these people who are listening?
Yep. Greater is he that's within me than he that's within the world.
Amen.
Keep that in mind.
That's it.
And we shall go far together.
I mean, we shall overcome.
We already
overcome it, yeah.
Yes. And just keep voting me in office.
Yeah.
I'll keep doing the work for the people.
Let's get her in this bond. I don't know how we going to do it, but let's get her in the bond. I think if you got in the bond, we should see some changes. I do want to see some black-owned banks. I was asking somebody, and I'm sorry, because I'm trying to wrap it up, but I'm not at the same time. I was asking somebody, how can we get black-owned banks? So, black-owned banks, before we close, you have to be approved to come here. Like, they can't just, somebody can't wake up and be like, I own a black-owned bank in Atlanta. I'm going to move to Delaware. They can't, you got to get.
Well, I already took Liberty Bank and Trust through the process, and they are approved. It's just a matter of them coming here.
Let's get them here.
That's right. They're ready. They're ready.
I'm ready for them to be here. I'm going to switch over everything.
Okay.
All my business. I'm dead serious, too. I was talking to my brother about black-owned banks.
Yes.
And I would like to meet somebody who either works for a black-owned bank or owns a black-owned bank. I would like to sit down and talk.
They're amazing people.
And we're going to have to talk after this.
Yes.
But I thank you for coming.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming. I thank you for having me. I've learned a lot more than I would have ever learned by going on YouTube and researching what you did for a living, because that's where I started.
That's where you started?
Yep. But I thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you.
God bless you.
Yeah, God bless you too.